But we continue with economics. Yes, economic growth and output gap. So today we're going into difficulties in measuring output gaps. Why is it difficult to measure output gap? It is difficult to measure output gap because economists do not understand the extent to which the potential growth is. It's known, like, oh, there's potential growth in this economy, there's potential in this economy. But how much potential do we have in this economy? It's not something that we can always decide. So yeah, I wrote, it is difficult to measure any output gap mainly because economists do not know exactly the position of the long-run aggregate supply curve. This is because potential output, which is relies heavily on relationships that are intertwined in the economy. So the potential output does not really mean that certain individuals or economic agents are doing well. It is intertwined. That means it is inside each other. So one factor might affect the other factor. So it is difficult for us. The economy, the war, or the country is not stable. So there are different factors that could happen or that could occur at any point in time. So the future is not known. So because the future is not known, it is difficult for us to understand our potentials, the economic potential. Because today, yeah, things are going well. Tomorrow there might not be new discovery. After tomorrow, there may be war. There may be natural disaster. So all these things will affect the growth of an economy. So it is difficult for economists to predict what happens in the future. So that is why it is difficult to measure the output gap. Is it clear there?
Yes.
Another reason is that GDP figures are constantly revised because estimating the output gap will initially start where short-term aggregate supply and aggregate demand intersect. It is always based on assumption that, oh, we want to know if we are in there's output gap, either it is positive or negative. So we start to know from understanding the short-term aggregate supply and the aggregate demand where they intersect. So their intersection is where we start from. But what brings that intersection, nobody knows. So it is always based on assumption that, oh, if the long aggregate supply curve is behind where the aggregate demand and aggregate supply meets, if it is behind, that is a negative output. But if it is above it, that's a positive output. What brings about the aggregate demand and short-term aggregate supply coming together, we can't tell. So that's another reason why it is difficult to measure. So most of the time, we can't tell because the GDP of a country fluctuates over time. It can increase, it might decrease. And it is also based on the level of income within the economy. So when you talk about the GDP, it could be the GDP might increase, but the GDP per capita might not increase. So mostly all these figures are not figures that we can really rely on. So that's why most of the time, economists do not want to use output gap to determine the potential of an economy. Is it clear?
Yes.
As a result, some economists believe that output gap are so difficult to measure that they are not a valid concept to use as the purpose of economic policy. So we don't use output gap when we want to make economic policy because they are difficult to measure based on the fact that we don't know what happens after now. Any question about that?
No.
Okay. So that takes us to hysteresis. For hysteresis, this implies a situation whereby past events significantly influence the present and the future situation. Even after those factors that bring about that negativity has been eradicated, but the event of the past still have influence on what happens now. That is what hysteresis is about. Do you get hysteresis?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote, okay, I said, okay, even after the factors that cause them have been removed. So you remove them, but they are still having impact on what happens in the present day. That is what hysteresis is about. So, okay, for example, hysteresis are one. During recession, output is lost, but will be regained during the next boom. The costs that follow after recession are these. So yes, during recession, especially deep recession, output will be lost, definitely, because recession means aggregate demand is falling. And if aggregate demand is falling, output is falling. So the aftermath effect of recession is what hysteresis is about. For example, those made unemployed would suffer a loss of income. So hysteresis is gone. Hysteresis occur because during recession, people will lose their jobs. Sorry, I need to make a video here. Sorry. For hysteresis simply, like I said earlier, hysteresis simply means the events of the past that still have, despite the fact that we try to solve the event of the past, but it's still having impact in the present day. That is what hysteresis is about. So I said this implies to a situation whereby past events significantly influence the present and the future situation, even after the factor that caused them have been removed. So the factor that caused it has been removed, but it's still affecting us. So example is recession. Recession is a fall in economic activity for 2 consecutive quarters. That is what recession is. So during recession, it is expected that output will be lost. Why will output lose, or why do we lose output during recession? We lose output during recession because recession brings about a fall or a weak aggregate demand. And because aggregate demand is falling, it simply means output is expected to fall. So as soon as that happens, what happens aftermath? Those made unemployed, okay, now I said, during recession, output is lost, but will be regained during the boom. Boom is after recession. So boom will occur because government have set in to improve or to boost aggregate demand, maybe through subsidy or cutting of taxes. Those things will increase aggregate demand. But why is hysteresis coming in after recession? One, those made unemployed would suffer a loss of income. During recession, because output is lost, a lot of people will lose their job. And because they lose their job, then it means they're going to lose income. That income, during the next boom, they might not be able to recover that income. So they might have to start afresh. So that means the event of the past is affecting their present day situation. That is hysteresis. Do you get the first point here? The second one, those on fixed income suffer in a boom if inflation rises. Now the economy has moved to a boom. Well, I have a fixed income. During a boom, aggregate demand is rising, right? So an increase in aggregate demand will bring about inflation. Yes or no?
Yes.
So during the boom, inflation would occur. But those that are in fixed income will be worse off because they cannot increase their income. So what really happens? It means now we have a job. Yeah, we're able to keep our job, but now the economy is booming. Demand increases within the economy, but the amount of money we have, the amount of our income, because it is fixed, we cannot increase the spending. So it's either we reduce our consumption or we seek for more wages. Yes or no? So the event of the past has affected their own situation now. Does it make sense here?
Yes.
The first one is you lose your job. Losing your job means
You're gonna say
you lose income. You're starting over again. You're starting afresh. So during the boom, you might get a job. You're now getting a job. It doesn't affect you anymore because you have a job. But the income that you have lost, you might not be able to regain it. That's hysteresis. The second one is the aftermath effect of recession. The economy is recovering. Then there's a boom. During the boom, fixed income earners will be worse off because during the boom, aggregate demand is expected to rise. So if aggregate demand increases, those with fixed income will be worse off because they cannot increase their consumption. Their disposable income would fall. Their purchasing power would reduce. So why does that happen? It happens because now the economy moved from recovery to a boom. So the event of recession has affected their earnings now. That is the second point. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
The third one, it's also argued that economies do not bounce back to their previous trend level of growth after deep recession. So here, during deep recession, a lot of firms would be out of business. Yes or no?
Yes.
So it is difficult for the economy to,
Bring them all back.
yeah, to bounce back immediately. So what are the reasons why economies might not be able to recover during a deep recession? Number one, permanent loss of, there are two things that would occur. Permanent loss of human capital, permanent loss of physical capital. Those two things are not things that we can easily get back. It takes time. To develop human capital, it takes time. To invest in capital goods, it takes time. So those two things will not just happen overnight. So we're going to start with permanent loss of human capital. In recession, millions can lose their jobs. Some may take early retirement and others may suffer a long period of unemployment.
So they'll lose their skills.
Yes. So I said early retirement and others may suffer long periods of unemployment and lose their skills. They will become less productive than before. So there's a deep recession, which brings about a long-term unemployment. So a long-term unemployment means I might lose my skills because I'm not doing anything. I become idle. So I don't even have money, income to train myself or to upgrade myself. So I'm even trying to survive. So during those period of time, my skills will be lost. So going back after the recession, I need to start training again. I need, to keep track. So which simply means it will take time again because education and training takes time before you can get the result. So it means we might not recover the economy. The economy might not bounce back immediately based on the loss of human capital here. I think the point is clear. Then the other one is the permanent loss of physical capital. For physical capital, we're talking about equipment. During recession, a lot of firms will be out of business. So that means they might not even be using their equipment, their technology. So because they're not using it, if boom occurs, it means they have to start buying again, or they have to update because there's always going to be technological advancement. So it means they have to start updating again. So this will take time. So here I wrote permanent loss of physical capital in the economy. In a recession, firms reduce their investment. If they fail to make up this during the next one, there's less physical capital in the economy than it would otherwise be if there's no recession. So the point is, during recession, investment reduces. And if investment is reducing, capital goods are reducing, physical capital goods are reducing. So there's no point investing in capital goods when we're not going to be able to sell. There's no assurance for us to sell. So if firms are unable to recover or are unable to meet up with buying more capital goods during the next boom, it means few capital goods will be available in the economy. So these are the two reasons why it might be difficult for an economy to recover after deep recession. One reason is the permanent loss of human capital and the permanent loss of physical capital. I think the point about hysteresis is clear.
Yep.
Any question about hysteresis?
No.
Good. So that takes us to the causes of potential growth. Are you there?
No.
Okay. The causes of potential growth. When we talk about potential growth, we're talking about increasing the GDP of an economy, the economic growth. That is what potential growth is here. So, firstly, fluctuations of the level of the level of real GDP around trend rate of growth are caused by demand side and supply side shock. We talked about that yesterday. We have fluctuation, actual positive or negative, mostly because there are demand side shock and supply side shock within the economy. So, however, the explanation on increase in the productive potential of an economy is the long-run supply curve. So, if the productive potential if there's going to be potential growth within an economy, it simply means that the long-run supply of that economy would increase. Without the long-run supply of an economy increasing, there won't be potential growth. I think the point is clear. So, an increase in the long-run supply will increase the potential level of output of a given economy. So if the potential level of output of a given economy has to increase, the long-run supply curve has to shift rightward. That is the point there. So what are the reasons why the long-run supply? Reasons why the long-run supply can increase? What are the factors that make the long-run supply to increase? So I wrote, increase in the quantity and the quality of inputs in the production process. So one of the reasons why we could have an increase in the long-run supply is an increase in the quality and the quantity of our production process in terms of the inputs. And when we talk about inputs, we're talking about land, we're talking about labor, capital. Two, efficiency in the use of existing inputs, as this will increase productivity. So an increase in the quantity and the quality of inputs during production process will bring about potential growth. Another one is efficiency, which is how we use our resources. If we are able to use our resources well, that means we are able to use our land, the labor, or the capital well, efficiently. That would increase productivity. And if productivity increases, potential growth will also increase. I think the point is clear.
Yes.
So that takes us to what we call the production function. So when we talk about production function, we're talking about productivity. We wouldn't talk about production without the factor inputs. So yeah, I would. Okay. So that means output is a function of land, labor, capital, technical process, and efficiency. So if production has to function, we need all inputs to be intact. That is what production function is here. Do you get it, please? So we're going to start with those factors that bring about increasing productivity. Number one is land. We're talking about land. Land is defined as all natural resources. Therefore, potential growth can be attributed to the level of natural resources a country has. So one of the reasons why we could have potential growth is the availability of raw materials or natural resources, discovery of new resources. So a country will be a country can really rely on its natural resources for its potential growth. So they made the example of Saudi Arabia here. Just imagine Saudi Arabia doesn't have natural resources. It will be a developing country that is, that is trying to survive. But with natural resources, it's a developed economy. Do you understand? So that is about land. So land is not just the land. Anything on land is land. So the availability of natural resources helps the growth potential of an economy. That's about land. I think it's clear. The second one is labor. So when we talk about labor, we're talking about human effort, physically or mentally, that helps in the production of goods and services. So the economic growth is likely to occur if there is either an increase in the quantity of workers in the economy, or there's an increase in the quality of workers. So when we talk about the quantity and quality of workers, because it's about labor, which is physical and mental efforts that helps in the production of goods and services. So we need quality based on intellect, human capital, and we also need quantity to increase output. So both quantity of labor and quality of labor would increase output, but quality would increase output more than quantity. So here I wrote, the following are the ways in which the quantity of labor can be increased in a given economy. We're talking about increasing the productive potential, or we're talking about potential growth. For potential growth to increase, we need land, natural resources, done. We need labor, which is the physical and mental effort in the course of production, in the production process. Now, the quality and the quantity are important. So first, we need to talk about the quantity. So how will the quantity of labor increase? And if it increases, as soon as it increases the potential growth of an economy. So what are the ways in which the quantity of labor can increase? One, the first one is growth in the size of the labor force. When we talk about growth in the size of the labor force, I wrote, this may result from changes in birth rate. The birth rate, you know what birth rate is, right? Increase in participation rate. And when we talk about participation rate, we're talking about
more people working.
People involvement in economically active people. And the last one is increase in immigration, the movement of people into a country. So these are growth in the size of the labor force. The second one is changes in demography. And when we talk about changes in demography, we're talking about increase in population. So changes in the population in terms of birth rate. So low birth rate may reduce the quantity of labor force, which reduces potential growth. And high birth rate is expected to increase the quantity of labor, which would also increase output and potential growth. The third one is changes in participation rate. This is the proportion of the population of a certain age who are either in work or seeking for work. So the participation of people might also determine the potential growth of the economy in terms of the quantity of labor. So if people are working, if people are actively engaged or are economically active, it means the economy is expected to rise in terms of its growth. But if people are they are voluntary unemployment, they don't want to work, it means there is unemployed resources. This will also affect the potential growth of an economy. So that's about participation rate. Also about participation rate, we need to talk about how long people stay in education. So if people stay longer in education, it means they won't be able to participate in the workforce. And that also affects the potential growth of the economy. And the last one is about women participation. So how much more the numbers of women that are participating in the economy, that are economically active, can also increase the potential growth of an economy. I think participation rate is clear.
Mm-hmm.
Is it clear, please?
Yes.
So the next one is immigration. And when we talk about immigration, we're talking about the movement of people in and out of a country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a faster way to increase the labor force is to employ migrant workers. So when you employ more migrant workers, it increases the supply of labor. And if the supply of labor is increasing, the numbers of work, the quantity of workers will increase. That is the point there. So, but not increasing the size of labor force may increase output, but will not necessarily increase economic welfare. When we increase the size of workers, the labor force, it increases output. Literally, it increases output, but it does not necessarily mean that income will increase or the welfare of an economy will increase. Why? Because we might increase the numbers of workers based on the fact that workers are cheap. So if they are cheap, it means they get less, or probably income might increase, but the income that has increased has to be shared among large numbers of workers. Do you get the point here?
Yes.
So welfare will not be taken care of because the income that has increased is not enough or sufficient, but the numbers of workers are available So that is why the welfare of an economy might not change. So that means income per person will not increase, despite the fact that each person has a job. Is it clear?
Yes.
So that's about immigration. Any question about immigration?
No.
Now that takes us to, we've talked about that. So now we go to the quality. Are you there?
Yep.
So going to the quality of labor. So another factor, because we said both quantity of labor and quality of labor would improve or increase potential growth. We've talked about quantity of labor. Now we need to talk about the quality of labor. So when we talk about the quality of labor, we're talking about increasing the size of the labor force in terms of human capital. So here I wrote the quality of labor. Increasing the size of labor force can increase output, but increasing the quality of labor input is likely to be far more important in the long run. This is because labor is not homogeneous. So the point we're making is this: workers are not the same. So workers have different levels. So the more you invest on them, on education and training, the better it becomes for your organization or for your company in the long run. So that means you cannot treat workers the same way. There are some that are more well-informed than others, that are more experienced than others. And you want to treat them the same way, you cannot, because they're not the same. That is the point we're making here. So workers can be more productive by education and training. Education and training improves the skills of workers. So if the skills of workers are improved through education and training, that improves the human capital, because human capital is the value you can add to your organization, to the firm, to the business, to the production. So this can only improve with education and training. So that's why they said labor is not the same. It's not homogeneous. So why is it important to improve human capital? Number one, it allows workers to adapt to different demands of existing stock capital with improvement in education and training. So whatever technology that comes in, I'll be able to use it because I'm being trained on it. So that is the adaptability there. So human capital is important because it improves the skills of workers. Two, it allows workers to be more flexible, as this means in-depth knowledge. With human capital, I become multi-skilled, more knowledge, more informed. So whatever happens, I know more about it. So that is another point about human capital. It improves the knowledge of workers. And the last one, it allows workers to contribute to changes that bring about improvement in production. Because there's human capital, workers will be able to contribute their own quota when it comes to production, improving the production process. Is it clear? Any question about that?
No.
That is done. So the next way, which output is, we're still talking about output as a function of production. We've talked about land, we've talked about labor. Now we're going to domestic investment. And when we talk about domestic investment, it is linked to capital. Do you get the point here? So for domestic investment, I wrote, this implies investment by domestic firms or government of an economy on capital goods. So investment is expected to increase the potential growth of an economy. However, there isn't necessarily a connection between high investment and high growth. So investment is not growth related. Some investment is not growth related. For example, building new houses don't lead to future increase in real GDP. Let me stop here first. So domestic investment means both government and firms have invested in capital goods. So the point is this: with investment in capital goods by government and firms, it is expected to increase the potential growth of an economy. But not all investment leads to potential growth. Making an example here, they used building of new houses. When you build a new house, when houses are built, presently they might increase income for individuals. But in the long run, the house has been built, it's been built. It does not increase GDP over time. So that means this investment is a one-off thing. It does not increase the GDP of that country afterwards. So not all investment will lead to increasing potential growth. But when we talk about potential growth, we're talking about the future growth of an economy. So building the house now, increase it now, but does not affect, does not impact in the future. I think the point is clear. Investment can also be wasted if it takes place in industries or projects that fail to be commercially successful. So investment can also be a waste if you invest in projects that cannot be commercially successful. Or like, let's assume that in this country, the primary sector is in decline, and you continue to invest in the primary sector, is in decline. So that means revenues are not expected in this sector. So why will you invest? It's a wasted investment. That is the point they're making here. So you have heavily invested in an industry or a project that is not commercial, that is not going to be commercially successful. That's a waste of investment too. Do you understand the point here? We're talking about investment, but should not be a waste one, a wasted one. That's the point. And therefore, okay, and lastly, I wrote, therefore, an increase in the stock of capital goods will cause potential growth. So if an economy wants to increase investment, it should increase investment in capital goods, because an increase in investment in capital goods will literally increase the potential growth of an economy. So whatever you want to invest on, you should invest on things that are still moving, not things that are in decline. That is the point about it. Is it clear? Is it clear? Yes. So that's about domestic investment. Another factor that could increase the potential growth of an economy is foreign direct investment, FDI. And when we talk about FDI, we're talking about the flow of money between countries, where one firm buys or invests in a new business in another country. So that is what foreign direct investment is. So with foreign direct investment, it injects money into the circular flow of an economy. And if money is being injected into the circular flow of an economy, income increases. And if income increases, aggregate demand is expected to rise. So FDI also, okay, now I said, FDI also causes potential growth because a foreign company may introduce new technology or management practices to a workforce. This will increase the capital and labor productivity. So, however, FDI destroys local competition, then the overall impact on potential growth may become limited. Yeah, to increase the potential growth of an economy, FDI can also contribute. FDI will definitely drive economic growth. But the point is, they drive it because money is it's an injection into the circular flow. That's one reason. Another one is that they might introduce new technology. They might be able to train workers of the domestic economy. So that means they will improve labor productivity and capital productivity. And if labor and capital productivity increases, it improves the economic growth of a nation. Yes or no? But the problem about FDI is that it reduces local competition. So if FDI comes into a country, domestic workers will be worse off because they won't be able to compete with FDIs, with multinationals. Do you understand? So that means the potential growth will become limited. So that means domestic firms do not have the potential to grow in the future because FDI will take over the market. So that is about FDI. I think it's clear. Any question about FDI?
No.
Then we have, second to the last one is innovation. And for innovation, we're talking about the creation of new products. The creation of new products or better product can also drive potential growth. And this can be done through process innovation. We call it process innovation. So what is process innovation? It simply means a development of more efficient way. You are able to develop a more efficient way to produce goods and services. So through process innovation, there will be innovation. And with innovation, economic or potential growth is expected to increase. So here I wrote, process innovation is the development of more efficient methods of production of goods and services. So we are able to develop a new way, a new method, an efficient method to produce goods and services. And if we're able to do that, it increases our economic growth or potential. So process innovation will shift the PPF outward. So that means with process innovation, the PPF is expected to shift from PPF1 to PPF2. So the government can also promote product innovation by directly introducing tax credits for research and development, and also maintain high quality education and training. So it is not only firms that can work on process innovation. Government can also do that by giving tax credits, like tax holiday, to firms that want to research and develop products. So with that, government would, what tax credit means is that government would reduce the percentage of what they have to pay in tax because of their research and development.
Contribution.
Yeah, so whatever amount of money they spend on research and development will be deducted from the taxes they have to pay. That's tax credit. Do you get it here?
Yeah.
So that encourages firms to develop new products. And developing new products will increase the potential growth of an economy. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Also, government can also contribute by increasing or spending on education and training. Because if government is able to spend on education and training, high quality one, it will make workers to be skilled and become future innovators. Do you understand?
Yep.
And the last one is efficiency and competition. Are you there?
Yep.
So when we talk about efficiency and competition, this we said the way factors of production are used together is vital for economic growth. In a market economy where there is increasing competition, firms have to be more efficient to remain competitive. As inefficient firms are likely to be out of market. Efficiency is the way we use resources. So if mostly in market economy, there's always going to be increasing competition. And increasing competition becomes an incentive for firms to be more efficient, because if they are not efficient, they'll be out of market. Because in a competitive market, it is difficult for you to sell at a higher price, because demand for goods and services are price elastic. As a result of that, it is more important for a firm to be efficient, to be able to remain competitive, because inefficient firms are likely to leave the market. So government have to come up by coming up with policies that will encourage competition and policies that will protect innovation. So these are ways in which government can increase efficiency, competition especially, for efficiency to occur. So markets promote efficiency, yes. Market promotes efficiency, but they can also fail. There's always going to be market failure. We talked about that. So if in the course of promoting efficiency, the market fails, government should be ready to step in to correct the market failure. So with government intervention, potential growth within the economy might also increase. So that ends potential growth anyway. Thank you. Okay.